What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their mum stories. My guest today is Carly Poyser, who I had the pleasure of meeting only a few months ago. Thanks for joining me today, Carly.
Thank you for having me, Maria. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay! Oh, I always love talking to mums. So, first, tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get a sense of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Carly. I have 2 sons. I'm a business coach. I work with women around their business, empowerment, confidence. I used to play rugby. I set up my local ladies team and I manage them and help coach, and I set up the girls teams. I train strong women and compete when I'm not too injured to do so. So that's me.
And I know previously when we've spoken, your sort of focus and cheerleader in you is all about promoting women to be strong and to sort of stand in their own like gifts and not be afraid to be women.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's embracing who you are, not being afraid to stand out and not being afraid to share your opinions. And so often we spend time as women going, I've got this great idea and it could be amazing. Okay. And then run in the opposite direction. You know, there's a lot of, I'm sure, amazing businesses out there that have never got off the ground because as women, we doubt ourselves first. We don't go, oh, that's great, let's go. We go, that's great. I can think of 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't do this.
That just reminds me of, I don't know, it's not a statistic, it probably is a statistic, where a guy will look at a job advert and he might be able to do 30% of it and he'll go, do you know what, I'll apply for it anyway.
Yeah.
A woman will look at it, she can do 80% of it and she'll go, oh no, but I can only do 80%. So I won't apply for it.
Yeah, definitely. And that does happen, you know, you just sort of think, that's beyond me. Not, oh, actually, it's a new job, a new experience. I can pick that up. And same as any part of the business. She goes, oh, I've got a great business idea, but I don't really know how to set one up, or I don't know how to move on to that next part. And then that's it.
Yeah. See, I love what you're about. I love your ethos. So let's talk about being mums. So first of all, tell me a bit about, or tell us your mum story.
Yeah. So I had my first son in 2003. I'd been told 18 months previously that you've got a 1% chance of conceiving naturally. I have endometriosis and polycystic ovaries. And the consultant just basically said, yeah, you know, we'll see you when you need IVF. And that was it. So I was like, oh, okay. And as soon as someone says to you, and I'd never hugely been, I must have children. It was never a huge part. I was very much career in the city, you know, trading, project management, accounting. That was what I wanted to do. But it's like going on a diet and someone passing you a chocolate bar you can't eat, you know. Someone all of a sudden says, yeah, you're not going to have kids. I'm like, please, I absolutely am. So went into it quite naively, which is probably why it worked. Literally, Alfie was born 10 months and 1 day after we got married. So it was a bit of a shock. I did sort of, do the pregnancy test and sit looking at the bottle of wine going, oh my God, this is going to be interesting. And then he was born a month premature, but very small, £5.13. So I had group B strep, and which they treated Alfie for. So he had to have a lumbar puncture, bless him. And it was all, special care, quite crazy. But he's absolutely fine. He's now a 6-foot strapping strong man about to start his sort of professional competing career by the Arnolds, doing their sort of amateur show. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with him. We often joke that, everything they gave him when he was a premature baby, the steroids, the this, the that, clearly has worked because he's quite a lump. Yeah. So that was Alfie. And then I had Oscar 11 months later.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bless you.
I know. Oscar was also premature, but a premature chunk. He was £7.13 and a month early. So
he was a lot bigger than his brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't have group B strep. I had obstetric cholestasis, so I was turning a lovely colour of yellow. And that's why he had to come a month early. They induced me. And yeah, he had one night in special care, and I think, they thought, what's he doing here? So that was it. And we was home quite quickly with him, which was lovely. And we've got photos of me at Alfie's first birthday party holding Oscar, and I just look like I'm from another planet. It just doesn't look real. I'm so tired, and I've got this sort of 2-week-old and a 1-year-old, and you're thinking, how did this happen? I had a career in the city. What is this? So it was
your career set you up. If you can deal with like the blokes in the city, then 2 babies, surely it set you up for that.
Yeah, it did a bit. And it wasn't that nothing fazed me. I'm just the type of personality that sort of says, okay, this is what we're dealing with. Let's crack on. That's not to say there weren't dark days. And, my husband worked really long hours, also in the city in law. And so it was me and the kids. And there was one night he walked in and I was just like, I think I need to jump off a bridge today. And he was like, okay, I'm worried now. I'm like, I think I just need sleep. It was hard. There was very little support, but it is what it is. Me and the boys have got an excellent bond. Oscar's 6 foot, nearly 6'6". He's 17. He's just, he's a lump as well. He's gone off to play for the NFL Academy in Loughborough. And he's completing his A levels there, and it's amazing. So yeah, that's it.
Oh my word. So I want to delve into 2 things here, really. The first one is, what was it like when Alfie was born, seeing him and having all of those emotions and going through all of, the fact that you've got this baby who's really small in intensive care, he's your first one. What was that like? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
It was a bit like shell shock, really, because I'd just gone on maternity leave. I think, I can't even remember what day he was born. I should know that. But it was like I had a day and then he was born, it was really quick. So I think you don't have much time to think. And then not once when he was in special care did I think things could go wrong here. I always just thought, well, he's going to come out, isn't he? That was it. I don't know if that was just in my head so that I didn't go there. Even when the only time I walked out when I couldn't face seeing him having stuff done and that, bless him, was when they done the lumbar punch and I had to walk out. And I was like, no, nobody needs to see that. But yeah, I always sort of thought he would be absolutely fine. And I think you put it into context, even, I joke that Oscar, when he was in special care at £7.13, it was embarrassing because there are some tiny babies. Well, even at £5.13, he was still quite a lump compared to those £1 and £2 premature. So I felt quite lucky in many ways. It wasn't as intense as some of those parents were going through, for sure.
But I think also based on just your introduction where you said, well, somebody said that I wasn't going to be a mum because of the low probability of me getting pregnant. And you went, oh, I don't think so. So yeah. It sounds like just your mindset, you're generally positive anyway. And if somebody says no, you'll find a reason to say yes.
Yeah, generally. And that's what happened when I set up the ladies rugby team locally, because my business that I had at the time, we sponsored a rugby awards. My local team that Oscar was going to at the time, they won Rugby Club of the Year. And I just went over to them and I'm like, guys, they're like, great, you're a great club, but you've got no women and girls. So I don't understand how you've just won. And they were like, middle-aged men. Oh, we've tried it. And I'm like, no. And it was a case of literally, hold my beer. We'll do this then, shall we? And 2 months later, we had ladies rugby team. Because it's just, so you can't leave that. You can't just go, oh, we've tried it. No, let's go.
I see, I love it. So now when I ask you this question, I'm already thinking that your answer is going to be, well, what else could I do, Maria? And the question is, you had 2 children.
Yeah.
And who were when the second one was born, when Oscar was born, under 1. How do you manage? I mean, I can sort of relate to you in the sense of I was one of those children. So my mum had my brother, and then 10.5 months later, I came along. So, and I just I'm like, how did you let Dad anywhere near you? That was my first. And then I said, I don't want to know.
I've been asked that as well, yeah.
But how do you manage 2 children under 1? Because I can remember how I felt with just 1 child, let alone
I think
like
because you're
2.
so in it. It's like you're in it already and you don't really have time to think. And I remember sitting there. I didn't really breastfeeding for me when the boys didn't happen really well. Alfie, I think it was like the 2 or 3 weeks. And then Oscar was the same. But that with Oscar was more down to the logistics. It takes time. You sit, you can't do that when you've got a baby crawling around and you're on your own. So, but I remember sitting there feeding Oscar like a bottle at that point and spooning food into Alfie's mouth and thinking, it's only 5 o'clock. Come on, 2 more hours, 2 more hours, and then you can go to bed. But I did do the whole thing and I went back to work quite quickly with both the boys. It was 6 weeks with Alfie, but I worked from home and we've got a nanny to help for those times when I was at work. And then with Oscar, I was 6 months and we had a nanny then, and I went back into the office. But that was partly sanity for me because it was a shock, because I didn't think this was going to be my life. It soon changed. 2.5 I think Oscar was 2.5 when I left the city. And just what am I doing? I want to be with them. But you just sort of get on with it. And I am really organized with stuff. I know it sounds ridiculous, but the washing was always put on. That was out. I'm just get up, do it, get it done. That's not to say there wasn't the end of the evening where you're sitting on the sofa going, don't know what day it is, really, what happened today, because that was, your life. But we would get out a lot. So we had 2 dogs at the time. So it would be out walking. And whether they were in a buggy or, one in a buggy, one on the buggy board, Alfie always wanted to walk. So the buggy board didn't really work. So you've got 2 dogs, a buggy and a child. But we'd get out and just, my theory was to tire them out, to be honest.
Did it work?
Let's run around. Yeah, it did. And I think, and even now, we've got 4 dogs now, but even now when I'm like, boys, should we go out for a walk? There was never really a moaning from them. I'm sure there is now. They're 17 and 18. They're like, oh my God. But they'll still humour me. And they'll still come out on a dog walk, and I think getting them out, fresh air was key.
Amazing. Well, it's like I said before I asked you the question, I sort of knew roughly what the answer was going to be.
Yeah.
Because that's your character, isn't it? That's how you are. Let's just crack on, because actually, what is the alternative, and do you want the alternative?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you sat there and got 2 in your head about it, I was lucky. I never had postnatal depression. I had, like everyone has moments, you're tired, you've been up feeding. But I was lucky that I never went through that either. So I could just crack on and, every weekend we'd be out with the kids. I think I just enjoyed getting them out and doing stuff. And, whether it just be the park for a couple of hours, it was important for me to get out the house. So, they'd come with me and we'd go and do something fun.
And being outdoors, regardless of, we're talking here about raising children, but just getting outside, I think it's a must.
Yeah.
It's so good for our health and our mental well-being
Mm.
to be outside, be in nature, be able to like get out of breath and have a good old run
Yeah.
and just enjoy outside.
Yeah. Even if it's raining, there's never the wrong weather, there's just the wrong clothing. So
That's what my husband says.
yeah, honestly, I'm just like, well, you stick on a pair of wellies, crack on. You know, you walk in the dogs, well, don't do it in trainers, do it in walking boots. It's tipping down out there. You know, just get it done. And I just think it's lovely to be outside.
Mm.
And I'm much happier outside than in, definitely. And
Except for
you
if you're
get
in the
me,
gym.
yeah, except when I'm in the gym, which I do love as well. But you know, especially if I can get anywhere near the sea, then that's it. That's like my happy place.
Oh. So then what led you to becoming a doula?
So in 2006, so the boys were 2 and 3. I fell pregnant again and I lost a daughter. So that's when I decided to leave the city. I lost her in the June, July, and I left the city a month later and just packed my desk and walked out and scared my husband to death because I hadn't told him. I was just like, I've got to go. That's it. So the doctor signed me off for a month and said, you know, I was stressed, which obviously I was. I just lost a child and I didn't know, you know, it put a few things into perspective for me, basically. And I knew then I didn't want to be in the city. I knew I wanted the birth part was important for me to support other women because with Alfie, it was really traumatic and I hemorrhaged and then there was a rush to theatre. And with Oscar, they induced me and I said, I need to push literally like 2 hours later. And they're like, no, you don't. We'll go and get pethidine. And they walk back in and I'm holding Oscar. So it was sort of, so I knew that around those areas, I wanted to support women. So during the time when I'd left my job in the city, we had to give the nanny at the time notice. So I used that time to go and retrain as a doula. And that was one of the best things I've ever done. It was just amazing to be able to be that support for that woman and advocate for her. Because often we walk into a room and everyone's got a white coat on and we just lie on a bed passively and go, okay, you do what you need to do. You know, and I wanted to be that person. I've done it before, you know, get up, come on, let's go, let's move. Let's walk around for a bit. Let's do something different, you know, and just give her a voice where she didn't feel she had one.
Mm. And so how long did you do that for?
I'd done that until 2010, so about 4 years. And in the meantime, I'd set up my other business, which was a children's sports coaching business. And that's the business I grew, sold and franchised before I started the business coaching.
Oh my word. So tell me about one of the most challenging times when you were a doula.
Oh, when you're pressing the emergency buzzer. I've done that twice, going, something is wrong here. And the midwives are just run off their feet and the clients aren't getting one-to-one care. And you're pressing that emergency buzzer. And there was one family, I'd done that. She was rushed to emergency cesarean and they could not talk to me afterwards about it. It was like, no, because I was that trigger for them. Then they were so traumatized by the birth of their baby. They went and done the sort of medical liaison part, talking back at the hospital, but to engage with them afterwards, they just didn't want to know, bless them, because it was too traumatic and I was there and that was it. But if I hadn't pressed that buzzer, there is no doubt, you know, and it's no fault of anyone and it's circumstance. Well, I guess the NHS is underfunded for midwives and that one-to-one care that is so important. And you've got to build up that relationship of trust. So as a doula, you're doing that. You're having the prenatal appointments with them. You're getting to know them as a family before. Some of the best births that I've ever attended are home births, you know, where the other kids are there. And it's just fantastic.
And so what is one of the most joyous times you had when you were a doula? I'm sure there are many, but just tell us about one.
One was a client who I'm still friends with now. She was having baby number, I think she's got 5 now. So baby number 4.
Yeah.
And she just felt she hadn't been heard before, and a couple of them had been a bit emergency situations. This one, she wanted to have a home birth. She'd sort of fought her way through to get that, and it was just amazing. And she had call him Jay, in a pool in her living room. And then the kids came down in the morning, and it's sort of 6 a.m. My car broke down on the way there, so my husband had to come and get me. We swapped cars. But you know, and you're like, we got there.
Yeah.
And she was just amazing. She was so focused, so within herself, which is where you need to be, you know, really listening to her body. And it was just amazing. I remember leaving about an hour after the midwife had left, and just thinking like, oh my God, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I've just done all that. That's like amazing. And just seeing how happy she was afterwards, and she didn't then feel she wasn't listened to. She felt she was supported. And, you know, it wasn't a case of taking over from her husband in any way, because it's not about that. It's about supporting them all. So whether it's running hot water to top up the pool with the husband, you know, or supporting her physically there, it's whatever she needs at the time. You know, the kids the next morning, getting them up, throwing them some Weetabix in a bowl and letting them meet their new brother, that sort of thing. Just being part of the experience and knowing that you've enabled that.
So
You
being
haven't
like the
done it, you've just enabled.
facilitator.
Yeah, you've just enabled that experience that can make so much difference.
Oh, wow, what a lovely memory for that family to have as well.
Yeah, and we're still friends now, which is fantastic. I've done some business coaching for her recently. She's setting up her own business, and it's just lovely to reconnect.
And you've shared a real like intimate moment with her as well, which will like keep you connected forever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, quite a few clients I'm still friends with, and it's lovely when you see their kids grow up, and then all of a sudden, I think another client put on there the other day that her son and daughter that I attended both of their births are now like 14 and 15. I'm like, no, you know, at the very start, and you're like, how did that happen? Oh my God, I feel so old. You know, you forget they're growing up the whole time you're not there. But again, amazing.
I suppose it's like with anything, like when I've met friends' children, as far as I'm concerned, that child is that age like forever. So for example, when I met my my nephew-in-law, or my husband's nephew, I met him when he was 10. He's now in his 20s, but as far as I'm concerned, he's still 10.
Yeah, it's really weird when you see pictures and, you know, you're like, oh my God, you know. The client that was talking about her home birth, her son's just started senior school. You're like, how did that happen? That was freaky. You know, I think she was nearly one of my last births that I attended.
Oh. So Carly, it's coming towards the end of our episode. I want to bring it more specifically back to you now, being a mum. And I want you to tell us a highlight of being a mum and one of the most challenging times of being a mum.
Okay. Highlight for me would be really most recently, I think it was about a month ago. And myself, Alfie and Oscar all competed in Essex Strongest. We all placed third, and it was just an amazing experience to do that with both of them. You know, before Oscar went off to the academy, and Alfie's, you know, he lifts way more now than I'm anywhere near. Good old testosterone. I tell you, I used to be an 18-year-old boy, that stuff's raging. And just, you know, having that experience with the both of them before we all sort of, our lives changed so much. You know, Oz is already gone. Alfie starts uni September. So it was just a moment where you sit there and you try and appreciate it, you know, and what that means.
Oh,
because it is all of a sudden, and everyone says this to you. And I remember the boys being young and people going, you know, when they're 2 and 3, and, you know, one's running in that direction, one's running in that direction, and you're like, I only have one pair of hands. And people going, you know, they grow up so fast, and you're like, I hope so. And now you're there and you're like, oh no, not ready. You know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of the highlights. And one of the hardest things, I'd say, is keep communicating with them, because there's so many times when if you decide, I don't know, not to do that, like we've had different things, family situations, and the boys have always known the situation. We've always communicated, this is why, this is what's happening, da-da-da. My dad was really sick. And we always now talk. You know, there was never a shh, kids are coming in the room type of moment. I think it's really important to always have those conversations. And Alfie, when he was about 8, asked something really embarrassing at the dinner table, which my husband nearly spat out his dinner. And I just sat there calmly and explained to him what that was. And my husband was like, oh my God, that's only going to get worse. And I'm like, yeah, but let's just have those conversations. It's normal. It's part of growing up. They're going to ask.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously the boys are 17, 18. They've got secrets. They've got things they do with their mates that I'm sure I do not want to know about. But, you know, they know who to call and who to reach out to. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important. So there will be lots of women listening and watching going, I need to be in Carly's world. Make it easy for them. How can they connect with you?
Yep. I've got a website called silamatter.co.uk, and silamatter means strong woman. So
I love it.
Hence the naming of the business, because I want all women to feel that strong and empowered. So silamatter, or search for that on socials. I'm everywhere. So yeah, it'll be great.
Woman after my own heart.
Yeah, just reach out.
And we'll put all the details in the episode description anyway, so it'll be really easy for people to connect with you. So I'd like to say thank you, Carly, for talking to me today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. No, it's been lovely to reminisce a bit as well, because it all goes so quick that you forget some of it.
And thank you, everybody, for listening, and I shall see you next time. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode, and if you did, then of course please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.